All right, awesome. Welcome to Heroic Hospitality, Justin. This is
Yes, sir.
Justin Marchase. We met about like a month ago at Beacon.
Yeah.
It's about a month ago, and I'll tell you one of the biggest privileges that I'm fortunate to receive is meeting awesome people like you at Beacon. And so when we were chatting, we were talking about your son and your business and your past, and this show is all about celebrating entrepreneurship, hospitality, and anybody that's a nightlife enthusiast. It's kind of how I've been saying it recently. And your entrepreneurial journey is just so amazing and inspiring. And I'd love to chat a little bit about that. And your history is, I can't even comprehend half the stuff you told me about your history in the military
Yes,
and currently in cannabis, and
Mhm.
how you've not only changed the cannabis business, but now people look up to you and your model and try to emulate it.
Correct.
So it's really, really wild to me on how your brain was firing that evening. So I thought it'd be awesome to have you on. So welcome, Justin.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. Maybe we talk a little bit about the cannabis company and kind of how it started.
Correct.
Specifically, you had this idea, then you had to kind of change this idea. And there's this idea that you have whenever you open a restaurant or a bar. It's like, I want this one thing to happen in this one way, But it's important that people understand that it never happens like that, right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
So please.
No. So 3 years ago, well, I was stationed here in the military in 2003. So I always
You were
thought,
what in the military? I'm sorry.
what I
What
did
was that first part? What was that first
I
part you
was
said? Sorry?
stationed
Stationed. Got it.
in
Sorry.
Fort Carson. I always knew I'd come back, but I didn't know when. So I sold my home in Florida. I came to Colorado starting a hospitality business, which is I had the very first license of a cannabis hospitality lounge.
Mm.
COVID hit. So when COVID hit, we weren't progressing. We were kind of stuck at stagnant. I'm not a stagnant person. If I'm not steadily doing this, there's something wrong. So I was an investor. I invested into the hospitality. I only owned 10%. Well, had most majority of the money of investment. I decided I was going to pull it out, and if I didn't pull it out, I would want to be equal shares owners to the next business that we were going to create, which was transportation, not hospitality anymore. So I became equal shares owners, 33.33%. About 8 months went by, started noticing no incline.
Yeah.
Some comments were made by my ex-business partners that wanted to take advantage, thinking that I'm a dumb jock or whatever you want to call me, ex-military, jarhead, whatever you want to call me. They just think I'm a block. And I do have an education. I do know how to do simple math.
Yeah.
Well, they were stealing from the company.
Yeah.
So it took about 6 months. I got an attorney, a private attorney, and one day they just really pissed me off. So I slid some paperwork over and told them they had 48 hours to sign the company over to me.
Yep.
They stole a lot of money. My first year in business with them, we only made $90,000.
Mm-hmm.
Within 8 months of me getting rid of them, I made $500,000.
That's right.
So, and I'm
And then
steadily growing.
when you had that just skyrocketing increase in revenue, this was the transportation company, the cannabis transportation company. Now,
Yes.
what about your company was different than the other transportation companies?
So a lot of these companies use used vehicles. I don't like using used vehicles. I have a fleet with Ford. So I get brand new all-wheel drives or not two-wheel drives for the mountains. I've also
Which directly relates to reliability and trust.
correct. And I trade those in every 2 years.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, I created an inverter system. Instead of, see what happens is like you can use dry ice like all the other companies are using. Well, I went to Socubano, some of my customers, like rosins, like fresh frozen clients that produce the rosins and stuff like that goes through the presses. And I asked them, what temperatures does this have to sustain while in transport? So I learned all about that. And one day I'm just sitting on my back patio looking at my transits trying to see what I can do different. And I created this idea of putting an inverter to power deep freezers.
Amazing.
So I keep all the fresh frozen, all the chocolate bars, and this has been going on for 7 years, and no one's thought about this. I think it's very...
And they're just still hustling dry ice around?
Yeah, very
It
ignorant.
weighs heavy? I mean, what?
Correct. Very costly. Yeah. The investment that I've made is very, very small for inverter systems and freezers. I can make that in one transport.
When you say make it, you mean make the revenue.
Yep. In one transport. And I keep it at -20 year round, whether it's hot out here. So that's what makes me different. And I was always told, no matter what industry you get in, if you can find something that makes you unique, then you're done. You'll make plenty of money.
Yep.
And that's what's happened.
And not just unique though, but you're really caring about not only your customers' product, but how it goes from A to B.
Correct.
Developing trust, right?
Correct.
And in most every business, trust is a pretty top 2
Once you have
component.
their trust, they will never go back to another client again. That's what people don't understand. They always ask me, well, aren't you afraid if somebody comes up with their own inverter system? No, I'm not. Yep. Because they've been working with me for years now. So they're going to go back to somebody that may be $1 cheaper. But what happens if their inverter system isn't the same? That's the type of, situation that they catch themselves in, and no one's going to go anywhere.
I have a question for you. What about, so you put so much care and effort and intention into how something is picked up from the manufacturer and then delivered to the dispensary. How do you, I mean, I know it's not your business or it's not on your radar, but what if they treat it poorly when it gets to the dispensary?
Well, as soon as it gets to the dispensary, it's checked in. Everything's on camera.
Yeah. So they have their own deep freezers and their own way of
they're supposed to.
it.
It'll say keep in the refrigerator. You know, like when I get it from the MIPS, which is who creates candy bars or rosins, it'll state, hey, this is refrigerated.
Yeah.
So like they label it that way, and then it stays cool. And then from my freezer, it literally leaves my freezer, goes straight into the dispensary.
So if there's a problem, you can tap into their resources, which is the cameras. Yeah.
Which I have, and then we have cameras in our vehicles that watch it at all times. So, any kind of security protocol, somebody breaks in, stuff like that is always taken care of.
Right.
So I always have my back. And I've been personally, when I started my own company, I started out in my F-350. I own 5 of these Transits now, brand new. So I have been to every dispensary in the state. So they know me personally. I build personal relationships. And that's what these other companies don't.
Anyone listening needs to really understand what a personal relationship, how the value of actually establishing a personal relationship.
Creating that family-owned business and then bringing it, because I will never go corporate. I just won't. I will fight that to the end.
Yep.
And even if I do sell for millions of dollars, which it would take millions of dollars for me to sell, I will always have a piece in there. I will always put a clause in there saying that I will always be able to represent my brand.
Sure.
And that's what a lot of people do. They sell their brand and they're gone. So like I have a generation, I believe in generational wealth. So that's why I'm giving it to my son. So then he can then do the same thing I do. So like when I step back, they're like, well, we know Micah. Let's call Micah. Micah will fix this. No other company you can call, and I'll put them out there, CTS, IDY, a GPS. You can call them. The complaints that I get is they can't get a hold of anybody. All my customers, you know how many dispensaries are in the state? You know how many MIPS and grows are in the state? They all
What's
have
a MIP?
A MIP is a manufacturer that produces product. So like Warner Brands.
What does that stand? What does that stand for? MIP? Do you know?
I don't actually know the terminology.
I was just curious.
So that's where Warner Brands, they make gummies. Whoever's making product is a MIP.
Yeah.
Whoever's then you have your grows. And then basically you have your dispensaries.
Yeah.
So it'll go from grow to laboratory, back to grow. They get their labs back to test for what their product is, if it has mold or anything like that in it.
Got it.
As soon as they get that back, then they can distribute flour, whether it's fresh rosin, dry, whatever trim, whatever they're using, that goes to whoever can produce it into a product.
Got it.
So that's basically how it rolls. And then I am the third party that goes and picks it up from the MIP and delivers it to the dispensaries.
Understood.
So, and I've done all of that. So I've done it from top to bottom. I know people personally. I know people all the way out in Telluride. I know Sedgwick. He's TJ. He owns Peak. He's 82nd Airborne. West Edison. That's Pratt. He's 82nd. He's a Ranger.
Yep.
So like, there's a lot of veterans out there that I know, and I have a camaraderie with them mainly. You know, I help them out a lot.
Of course. What is your relationship with that community?
Very well. I'm actually fighting for. So they have social equity. Everybody knows what social equity is. So, and I believe in some. I guess you would say point to where I get it. You know, people were untreated fairly, you know, whether you're white, black, you know, I'm Italian. You know, I'm second generation. My grandfather came off the boat, you know. So he wasn't treated fairly, you know, when he came over. But I understand what they're doing, but what they have done is they left out combat disabled veterans.
When you say they, are you talking about the powers that be, like the government?
Whoever's running the social equity program? They kind of left it out, and I think it was 2 weeks ago now. I went to a meeting for the first time because I kind of keep to myself, and I kind of, you know, sat back and thought about it. It just very frustrated me that they would consider giving social equity to somebody that has a drug charge from 10 years ago, but they wouldn't give disabled veterans that have fought in combat that have an honorable discharge the same right. Excuse me, but it sounds ass backwards to me.
Right.
I don't care what.
Now,
color.
when you say social equity, I totally understand what that means, but what are you specifically referring to when you're saying they're choosing to give money in this?
Well, what they do is
this bucket as opposed to this.
So
this bucket?
The only thing stopping me from being the top dog in the state, I don't have a storage, right? So when I have a storage, that's another change in my company. I will shut down. I've already shut down one company. I will shut down multiple companies. I was actually the laughing stock when I first came in. Oh, you'll be out of here in 3 months. Okay, well, I've been here for 3 years, and I'm doing very well. But the social equity program that they created is stopping me from getting my permit. Because
but when you say they, I'm trying to understand who they is.
Well, the social equity, like the MED.
Got it.
They have
the national.
So it's the Marijuana Enforcement Division of Colorado.
Got it.
They also have a social equity group that is majority African Americans.
Okay.
Which I have no problem. My second mother is African American. Her name is Willa Mae Smiley. I'm not racist. I've never have been. And my valid point is when I go overseas, I fight with all kinds of colors. The only thing that we think of is you're wearing the same uniform as me. We don't think of anything else. And when I went to this meeting, I told them that. I said, you know, I don't think it's fair that, you know, every revenue office in the state of Colorado, whether it's your license, whether it's your registration, whether it's your hunting and fishing, if you're 50% or greater with a combat related injury from the VA, you get a free hunting and fishing for the rest of your life in the state of Colorado. You get a discount on that, but the social equity group has totally disowned my group, and I'm
understood.
Offended. You know, my group has sacrificed the biggest sacrifice you can. So like the state of New York has created in their social equity program, not just 50% or greater combat, it just says disabled veteran, which I totally disagree with. I think that you should make that group a little smaller and give it to 50% or greater combat veteran that has a disability from combat. Because then what happens if you just give it to every veteran, not every veteran has been to combat.
Understood.
Not every veteran has they sit at computers sometimes, you know, and I get it, but I think the combat veterans that are injured should be taken care of, because what you're going to do is if you just say veteran, it's going to get overwhelmed with people trying to get licenses.
Understood, yeah.
This state is so overwhelmed with veterans that they just flood the market with, so they have to make it a rule of, hey, 50% or greater, or you even put spouses that have lost their spouse in combat. Put them in there because they would need help. They just lost their spouse in combat.
Yeah.
But it's just backwards. So I'm fighting for that.
Yeah.
So I have a meeting next week with the social equity group and they want to see where our lines can connect. And I think no one's really ever said anything, and it really opened their mind. Like, yeah, we might have forgot about the veteran population.
Shoot. Yeah. Wow.
And I don't think it's fair.
So when you're meeting with them, what is this meeting? Is it like a town hall type
No,
of thing?
it's
What do these
actually-
meetings look like?
So it's the MED. You have to be a shareholder, which is you're an owner of, cannabis, some kind of license, a MEP, a grow, transportation. They send these emails out that, you can go to these meetings and sit in person, or you can be on, Zoom. And I showed up in person my first time. This is my first meeting 2 weeks ago. And I really think it's like more of like a club. And I'm not that type of person.
Yeah.
So, but this time I was like, you know what? This is getting a little bit ridiculous, because what they're doing is they're trying to raise prices for licensing. And basically, it was my turn to be like, okay, well, you guys are raising licenses. I was honest with them. I said, I'm not here for any of that. I agree that, prices need to go up maybe to make more money, but what about my group? And that's how it all started.
Yeah.
So I have multiple groups that are like contacting me now. They're like, hey, we want to talk about this. Maybe we can get this changed in legislation by the 1st, and that's what I'm going to fight for. I've told them, I said, if I have to, I'll sit in front of that governor's office until he comes out. Because I know damn well that if I tell him what the MED is doing and they're not including veterans, I know he would have a shit fit. It's not right what they're doing.
And you're also a veteran.
Yes.
Honorably discharged.
Yeah, 90% disabled.
Yeah.
I was
Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, no
obviously
problem.
your service.
And I wasn't always
talked
perfect.
about that extensively, and I'd love to understand what in that experience that gets the military and that experience, but how did that open your eyes to on how you look at business? Because you look at business through such a different lens than a lot of people I talk to.
Well, it's, and don't get me wrong, excuse my language.
It's all right.
I came out a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I really did. Not that I was that person. It was that I just didn't know how to cope with the things I was going through. So I was
when you got back. Yeah.
So like drugs, alcohol, all these things I went through. I was a homeless veteran. I didn't have to be. My parents have great money. They didn't want me to be, but I just didn't want them to see me like that. So living under a bridge. I literally, I don't know, it was just one night I was drinking, and I had some drugs on me, did a bunch of drugs, and all of a sudden I sobered up. Like, it was like an instant, like, cold sweat, and I do that every Saturday, drink a handle of Jack Daniels, a 6-pack of beer, and do a bunch of drugs. And I was on the lake, and all of a sudden it just hit me. The next day I went to the gym. And so it really hit me that, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Like, you got to move on. Like when we're in combat, there's no, the guy falls out or a soldier gets shot. You have to take care of who's ever still standing. You got to move forward. You can't, and then come back later, and deal with it. So
that's the protocol typically.
Basically, probably, drag them out of the way and keep going. You run towards the bullets, not away from the bullets. So what I wasn't doing is I wasn't facing the facts. I was feeling sorry for myself. And I don't feel sorry for people anymore, because I don't even feel sorry for most homeless veterans nowadays. The Vietnam era, yes, I do, because they didn't have all the help, but there's plenty of help now. And if they want to get better, they can get better. Yeah. There's so many programs out there. And that's coming from somebody that did 7 years of recovery, whether it was physically, mentally, emotionally. I did all that. And coming from that, that's what actually changed me. It really wasn't. Overseas gives you
So it sounds like it's kind of your training, and just, I don't want to say the word programming, but when you do something in repetition over and over again, and you've been trained a very certain way, can you go back to the reason why you're able to pick yourself up from out from under the bridge? And that's how something like when you went back into that. Yeah, it has part of your brain that.
It has that ability, but I was always raised that way. I came from a very hard family. My father played for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was an athlete. My mother was a basketball player for Virginia Tech. She was an athlete. They always kept me up here. And then my mom even told me before she passed away that she knew that I would survive. But she knew if my little brother went to the military, he wouldn't, because they taught me how to survive. I was just a rough kid. I boxed, I fought on the street. Like, they knew that I'd be okay.
Yeah.
But it's just something that, from what I was grown up to be, then of course the military taught me a different type of survival and a different type of mentally physical strength.
Right.
And you kind of just put all those together. So everything's kind of combined. It's just like when you get out of the military, these veterans don't know how to cope, especially the combat veterans. Like, that's all you know. You go overseas at the age of 18, 19 years old, and you're over there in a war. And I wasn't in a peace operation. I was in the first wave in Iraq. So we were guns blazing. We were fighting every day for months. And I mean, think about it. 18 years old, you come from 18.
You're a boy.
Yeah, you're a boy. You have innocence that'll never come back. All that's gone. It's ruined. Like, it's just gone. You just can't get it back. And I know it. And, you know, but at the same time, when that innocence is gone, that's when you become a man. You know, when you mess up, you take accountability for it, you know, and that's what I do. Like I said, I wasn't perfect. When I got back from Iraq, I was in Colorado Springs. I was getting so much trouble. You know, I wasn't the same soldier, but it was just more of, I didn't know how to act. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, well, some of my unit's still over there. I don't want to be here. I want to go back. Because you deal with like this bar scene when you first come back, and you're like, these people are stupid.
Gosh.
This
is I couldn't even imagine.
Like, entitlement and all that stuff. Like, I'm not entitled at all.
Earlier you said something about, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you said something, and I'd love to hear what you said earlier. That's why I'm giving this business to my son. When I spoke with you, it wasn't a gift. You're making him earn it.
Absolutely.
And he's earning the right to take and fill your shoes.
Correct.
Right. And so with what you experienced overseas, and when you come back and you try to and picked yourself up from underneath the bridge, and then started a company, found out your partners were stealing, reinvented the company to be very specific on a need and something that the market desperately needed. How is this transition looking like for you? Because I believe when we spoke, your son did not go to the military.
No,
but you're still offering some of that that anchor. Can you kind of give us a little bit of that?
Well, I'm very hard on him, like I have to be, and he understands that. But he's very mature for his age. He's always, since day one, he's not my biological, like I explained to you.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
But he walks like me, talks like me. He's respectful. Sure,
gentleman.
We drive the same Harleys. We wear the same clothes. But yeah, I've known him probably around 7 years old. His father's a piece of shit. So he's always been around adults. Like, his mother, when she was trying to find somebody, every boyfriend that she had was like, oh, we need our time. From the get-go, I knew what I was signing up for. So it wasn't, first day I met her, she was, oh, we're going to the beach and I got my kid with me. Okay. And then when we started talking, it was like, hey, we're going to go do this. Well, bring Micah. You know, like, she never got that. Neither did he. So from the get-go, he looked up to me, and like the yes, sir, no, sir. Yeah, it was a lot of work because I'm not his biological, but I am his father. Yeah. And he does have my last name. So, you know, and then eventually it just kind of clicked with him. And I think it's just from a young age, just seeing the respect that everybody gives me. You know, like I told you this weekend, we had an incident that happened. Yeah. You know, the Dr. Care, he, when I came around the corner on my side-by-side, he literally didn't say Tommy, didn't say Adam. He said, Justin, get this side-by-side off my wife. And I did it. So the respect that I get is just being loyal, being honest, not sugarcoating anything, whether it's my son, whether it's my wife. You know, sometimes they get pissed off at me, but people respect me for that.
If there was something that you could describe or distill when it comes to like I said before, you've trained Micah, You
can say that. He's been through boot camp.
He's been through your boot camp, I guess. But what are you doing for him to earn the right to receive this company? I think that's really my question, because you're not giving him the company. No. You're putting him in a position to say yes.
So our agreement with him is he pretty much gets his bills paid. Mm-hmm. Right? He gets a paycheck, a salary, or whatever you want to call it. His motorcycle gets paid for. He has a truck, credit cards. He has spending money, but it's very limited. It's like, you have this much. So if you want something for your bike, you need to save up. You only have an extra $50. So that's going to take you a year to get whatever you're going to get, So I teach him, like, yeah, do we have a bunch of money? Yeah, we have money. You don't have money, and he understands that at a young age, which a lot of kids at 22 don't these days. So like, he drives his ass off. He works. I mean, right now he's going to Silverton all the way by Telluride. Yep. And he only gets his bills paid, and that's it. Everything else, he has like an extra $100 in his paycheck, and then if he wants something, he can save it, or if he wants to go out, he spends it there.
So one of your strategies is not putting him in a position to overspend or overindulge.
Correct. You don't want your children to overindulge, because as soon as it's entitlement. Mm-hmm. Oh, my mom and dad have money; they'll take care of it. Like, that's not how I roll, or I've never rolled. Like, in Florida, I didn't need to work. I just made extra money. There's a Christmas tree stand that I used to do. Lance McCullough Sr. is the father of Lance McCullough Jr. that plays for the Astros. I'm friends with them. My father played professional ball for the Pirates, while his dad played for the Padres and the Yankees. And he created, his family for generations has this huge Christmas tree stand. And every year I'd work it. I mean, I'd make $8,000. But I teach them, well, I don't need that, but I mean, I can use the $8,000 for Christmas, and that whole $8,000 would go to them for Christmas. Yeah. Just because we have money doesn't mean you can't make more money. Hard work. So that's what he did. He worked a Christmas tree stand with me, and I taught him, hey, this is hard work, but when you start seeing those tips come in, and at the end of the Christmas season, and you're like, I'm only 15 years old, and I just made $4,000. Like,
did Micah do this with you? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
that's
so
great. Yeah.
So I've taught him hard work.
His version of a paper route.
Correct. Yeah. So then, like, tile work. My father, after he's done playing baseball, he was a contractor, but he started out as a tile layer and remodeler before he got his contracting license. And I've taught my son how to do tile. I've taught him like certain things like that. You
spent a lot of time with him, and that's one thing that this younger generation doesn't have the luxury of is a father figure that is willing and able and wants to spend time and help groom and put them in a bright position to understand life as we knew it back then.
Correct.
We're almost the same age.
Yeah, but correct. But at the same time, I agree, but I disagree, because my father, and I didn't understand it at a young age, and he missed a lot of my baseball games, and but he worked his ass off. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm like, damn, my dad didn't make it again. My dad didn't make it again. But when you get older, you realize, like, he wasn't doing that intentionally. He was working his ass off. Yeah. So like, some of these kids, they take that to heart, which I did too, Of course. But it took 30 years for me to realize, like, oh, he wasn't doing that, because he wanted to. He didn't want to miss my baseball games. Yeah. But the only reason I got a nice baseball glove and a nice baseball bat is because he was out there working his ass off, or my mom was out there working her ass off. So, if there's young kids that think that, I don't want them to be like, really sit back and realize what your parent, if your dad's going to the bar and hooking up with chicks and doing this other stuff, then he's a douchebag. Yeah. But if your father's out there just grinding, just really sit back and know, hey, where's my dad at while I'm playing sports? Yeah. Oh, he's working.
Offer some grace.
Offer some grace. Yeah. Don't be so hard on your parents. Like, yo, you missed my baseball game. Like, what? And I was that kid.
That's that entitled mindset.
That's an entitled mindset. Like, oh, well, the only reason you get to play baseball and get to do travel ball, that stuff costs money. Mm-hmm. You don't have the money. Who's paying for that? So, and that's what I explained to, Mike is the same way. Like, you have a nice necklace on your neck like I do. You have a nice motorcycle. You know, be grateful for what you have.
There's one thing that you told me that I've been thinking a lot about, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is you, and we have a very similar view on this, but you treat your employees in a very specific way.
Yes.
And I'd love to understand kind of the reasoning behind how you treat your employees and what you do and why it's different to work for you as opposed to someone else, and obviously eventually Micah.
So basically, I mean, we've all worked for somebody. And there's only one person I've ever worked for, which is Dr. Care, that didn't treat me like a number. You know, like, oh, you're just the next employee. And they're like, we can replace you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and once you find good employees that are loyal, and it takes a while, you know, I've been through my employees, and if they don't show loyalty and they're very selfish, I don't deal with that. You got to go. My employees know that we're hired on a team level, even though they're all 1099 drivers, but sometimes you got to ask for help, you know? And if somebody's very selfish, like I said, I'm not going to deal with it. So what I do is my hiring process, I get somebody, I interview them myself, maybe take them out for lunch, something like that, get to know them personally. I ask them personal questions like, are you close to your mother? It shows a lot of, if they're like, well, my mother was never in my life. Okay, explain to me. Who's your mother? You got to have some type of mother. You know, somebody has
a figure
minimum, of something. And so I get really personal with my questions when I hire somebody. Like, hey, how many friends you have? Oh, I got 100. That's a red flag. No one has 100 friends. It's true.
No.
You know, I might have a handful, you know, and that comes with maturity. I don't want somebody that has 100 friends. Or you ask them, hey, you know, how you doing on your finances? And they're like, why are you asking that? Well, it's because you're handling a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, once somebody wants to like give you that response and defense real quick, I can't hire you. You know, so like those are certain questions. And then the team oriented basis is I'm a family owned business, and that's what I want to keep it as. No matter how big I get, there's going to be a piece of me that's going to be family oriented.
Sure. So,
you know, when you invite somebody into your house, right, you let them introduce them, like, and you have your friends over, this new person is going to meet everybody. And if your best friend looks back and says, I don't know about this guy, you know, you're going to listen to that. It's going to be in your head, no matter if you think he's kind of good or not. So when I hire somebody, I'm like, hey, you're going to go into this training protocol, but before you get on the road and start training, I want you to come to my house. I'm going to cook. The owner of the company is going to cook you food.
Yeah.
And then you're going to meet everybody at the round table. And I'm going to see how they interact. I'm going to see if they're shy. I'm going to see if they're standoffish. You know, I'm going to see how they talk to each other. And, you know, this is Colorado. All my drivers, they do smoke cannabis. I don't really do cannabis. I'd rather have a whiskey, you know. But I let them go out there, and every single one of them smokes together. You know, and they sit out there and they laugh, they giggle, you know. And that camaraderie that you get is the same thing in the military. You know, it's like if I go into a raid, or when I was law enforcement too as well, I go in, you got to know that you can trust who's behind your back,
right,
or who's in front of you. And if you don't have that trust and they're not willing to have your back, then they can't be on the team.
And that's something as simple as just getting gas before you go in for the day.
Correct.
Like, it could be anything that you're talking about. And
yeah.
I just found such value in that because, you know, we have a version of that in hospitality, which is called a stage, and somebody will come and work and they can do basic duties, but really the intention is that the other folks, the other team members, can talk to them and engage with them. And is this someone that you can work side by side with?
Correct.
Because culture is so important to not only, you know, obviously my company, but yours as well. What you go above and beyond, I mean, that's a really heavy investment. So it's taken a lot to actually get to that point before you cook for them and before you invite them to your house, right?
Correct.
But they're still not hired at that time.
No, they're not. Yeah. They have to go through training. But before, I don't want to waste anybody's time.
Yeah.
So if if you don't match, then you can't have the job. I'm not even going to waste my time getting you trained.
Yep.
You know, even if you could be the best employer, best 1099 driver I have.
Yeah.
It does. I don't care if that's what I'm saying. I don't care if you're the best. I don't care if you're better than all my guys.
I hope that like when people are watching and listening to this, that they can find their version. If they are leaders within their company, entrepreneurs that employ a team, find their version of figuring out this culture piece before they move forward with somebody.
You always got to find your leader too.
Yeah.
Like I'm the general, I'm the owner. And you got to find your sergeant major, and you got to find your first sergeant.
Yep.
And you got to find your sergeants, and you got to find your privates. It's the same thing anywhere you go. So yeah, Jeff, the guy that you saw outside that pulled up to my van, that's my leader. He's my age. Does he have problems? Yeah, of course he does. But he has the maturity level. Sometimes I have to get into his ass, and I'm like, hey, you're not being a leader right now. But that's only because I'm trying to better him. Just because we're the same age, I have a lot more experience in life.
Yep.
And I try to explain that. I have a 45-year-old guy that has just recently, he's finding out that he's a little autistic. His parent, he was in that age of air that his parents were like, go outside and go play, so I'm the first person that's ever brought it up. So he's actually getting help, but sometimes he wants to compare, well, I'm older than you. Just because you're 5 years older than me doesn't mean that you have more life than me.
Yeah.
I've lived a lot more. I've done things that you couldn't even dream of. Your nightmares couldn't compare to my nightmares. So it's just like, I try to, that's another thing. Like, no matter how young or these entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's right.
I got that word.
I'm with you.
No matter how young you are, don't think that, and I don't know everything either, but, you could be 25 and maybe you know a lot more than I do. I don't know.
Yep.
Maybe.
I have a business coach, and we were talking the other day, and somehow it came up. It's the people that I really aspire to be around and want to be around and want to learn from. They all have one trait in common, which is they're all lifetime learners. They just learn along the way.
Every day you can learn something.
Very curious, always asking questions, good or bad, right? And so, I just appreciate you being on the show today and offering your view of being an entrepreneur, starting from a super, super challenging place, and your journey. I mean, what you just shared it's a lot. Yeah. And I can't thank you enough, and for everything you've done for your family and for your company and for the people that you employ. So, and for obviously our country as well. Yeah. So thank you so much.
I mean, it was a long road. Like everybody, they want, like Micah, he's 22 years old and he wants everything right now.
Of course.
And we were all
What advice would you give younger folks that are like, because it's very common. We we're the same thing. Yeah.
Just slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down. You're 22.
But how do you slow down? Because that's easier said than done. Correct. When you're that young.
It takes something, maturity. I mean, you can be 22 years old like Micah. It just takes maturity. It just takes, like, we'll say this. I mean, it's easier said than done, but do you go to the gym every day? Yeah.
Yep.
You work out every day? Yeah. It's easier said than done, huh? But you do it.
Yep.
So there really is no excuse.
Yeah.
I don't give anybody, like, all the mess ups, all the screw ups I've done my whole life. There's no excuse for it. That was me who decided to do all that.
Right.
When I was in the military and I got back from overseas and I was acting a fool and, I didn't know how to cope with it. Well, guess what? Easier said than done. I could have done it.
Yep.
But my maturity wasn't there. It's all about maturity. But you can go out there and you'll go to the bar, and instead of sitting at home and studying, or, you want a business to run, but you want to go out and party with your friends. What's more important? Your friends should understand that you're working on something. And if they don't understand that, that's not your friend. And that's where the maturity factor of younger people trying to create a business don't understand, because they're always trying to please everybody else. And that's not the way. If I would have known this at a younger age, I wouldn't have hung out with the people that I was hanging out with. Because, I think everybody in this room can say, how many times did your mom and dad tell you, hey, if you just do this right now, you'll be so far ahead of me.
Yeah.
If you just do this right now. Everybody's parent has said, I say it to Micah. I say it to my youngest son. If you just do this right now. And I tell him, I said, if I would just, same word, it's like spitting from my parents. Like every time I say it, I'm saying the same shit my parents said. Like, and
Yeah.
now I have a son that actually is doing what I should have done. So
It's amazing.
maybe it's like, alcohol. Like my grandfather, he was an alcoholic. He used to beat my grandmother. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't beat women. So I broke that curse. I was the generation that doesn't beat women. I'm the generation that's not an alcoholic. And now I tell my son, I'm like, yeah, I'm grumpy. Well, now it's your turn to break the grumpiness. You don't beat women. You respect women. Don't be grumpy. And be ahead of me.
You'll be grumpy for both of them.
Yeah, I'm grumpy for both of them. My dad's even grumpier than me, But I'm the lighter version of my father.
Yeah.
And now it's my son's turn to break that curse.
What can we do to support you right now? Anything that I know we talked a little bit about wounded veterans. Is there anything that we can offer, or
no, honestly,
a shout out or anything like that we can?
Honestly, I'm a self-made man.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I have a lot of mistakes. I don't have any regrets. Because I wouldn't be the person I am. That's another thing. Mess up your whole life. Mess it up. It's like a cross-country run, right? It's not about how fast you start out. It's what you finish at. That's why it's a pace.
Marathon.
It's a marathon. You know what I'm saying? It's like I was balls to the wall when I was younger. And now I've kind of slowed my pace down, and now I'm catching up to what I should have been.
Said this to a friend of mine, a colleague, a while back, is like, playing the game or keeping score. Which one are you doing?
Yeah.
And how does that feel when you're doing either one of those things? And playing the game is always more fun than keeping score.
Correct.
But thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Your insight is super helpful. And
yeah. And just like I said, it's just like slow yourself down. Don't have any regrets. If your ball's to the wall and you end up being in your 30s, my age, that's what people hold on to, I think, and they don't know how to move on from it. And once you can move on,
surround yourself with great people.
Oh yeah,
sounds like you've done that.
Oh yeah, I found myself. I mean, I have all kinds of friends, and and it's a small group.
Yeah,
but they're all kinds are different in each and every way. Some guys are military, some guys are snowboarders, some guys are hunters, some guys are just some redneck that lives in the woods. Surround yourself with just a good person is a good person. A shitty person is a shitty person. That's basically how the world works. There's no other color. There's no other, you're brown, yellow, that makes you a different person. No. You're either a good person or you're a shitty person. So, and surround yourself. The stronger people that you surround yourself with, and I did it. That's why I was so weak when I was younger. It's another thing, like if I would have known what I know now, I wouldn't have surrounded myself with those people, because all they do is drag you down. Like I think, what is it, Snoop Dogg? He said it when he started becoming famous, but he was a gangbanger when he was younger. He did his thing, but at one point he matured, became successful, was way up here, right? And then all of his homeboys from wherever he grew up was like, oh, you're too good, blah, blah, blah. You don't talk to us no more. No, it's not. And I tell my son this all the time. It is, if you become up here and your friends are down here, it is not your job to come back down to their level. It's their job to catch up to you. And if they're not willing to do this and you're steadily doing this, you can slow down for a little bit. But if they're steadily doing this, they have to go. Sorry. Survival of the fittest.
Man, I love it.
Yeah, so.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I appreciate it.
No problem.
Appreciate everything, brother. Thank you.
Yep.